Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to make an outline using the grid method. Now, there are three major ways of making an outline. There are many methods actually, but there are three major ones that are very prominent. The first one is the freehand method, another one is the tracing method, and the third one is the grid method. So in this video, I'm going to show you how you can make an accurate outline of your drawing using the grid method. So when we talk about using grids to get an accurate outline, what do we even mean? What are grids? I'll tell you more about grids later in the video. Now, for this particular tutorial, I'm going to be using the Sanford 0.5 mechanical pencil. The lead inside is HB, which helps in keeping our lines as light as possible. We have the Nataraj 621 Plasto eraser and the Nataraj 621 scale 30 cm plastic ruler. Now let's get to work. What do we mean by grid? Well, the grid is basically a set of guidelines or grid squares, whichever way you want to put it, that you make on your reference photo. And those same grid squares should be replicated on your drawing paper to get an accurate outline. Now for this tutorial, I'm making an 8 by 10 inches drawing. So to get a moderate number of grid lines or squares, I'm marking 1 inch on the bottom side of the paper. Using the same number of inches, I'm going to mark them on the top side of the paper, after which I'm going to connect the dots so I can have vertical lines on the paper. Now I'll be making the dots on the top side of the paper using the same 1 inch measurement. Now, by the end of this part of the video, I should have 8 lines on this side of the paper. That's 8 vertical lines. Now, this method of connecting the dots is one sure way to keep your lines as straight as you can have them. It's also important to note that you need to keep your grid lines as light as possible. Now the reason why this is important is because, if you press too hard on the lines, by the time you shade on them, you might have marks on your paper, which is something we don't want. And that's the same reason I'm using a mechanical pencil 0.5 with an HB lead in it, because it helps me make very light lines. I'm sure you can barely see the lines right now. It's not the poor quality of my camera, it's just how light I've been able to make these lines. Now, if you don't have a mechanical pencil, I suggest you use an HB grade of a regular graphite pencil. So now that I'm done making the vertical lines, I'm gonna go ahead and make another set of 1 inch markings on the left side of the paper. After that, I'm going to do the same number of markings on the right side and connect the dots to give me my horizontal lines. And I'm going to go ahead and connect my dots again in order to have my horizontal lines on the paper. Once again, you need to be careful how much pressure you put on your paper so you don't leave markings on it. By the time I'm done drawing these lines, I should have 8 columns and 10 rows with each of them having 1 inch spacing between them. Well, as you can see, now I'm done drawing the lines. I'm zooming in just a little bit just so you can see what it looks like up close. The next thing we're going to do is to grab our reference photo and study each square individually, after which you decide which parts you're going to start your drawing from. I want to start from a corner. And for this part, I'm going to start with the hair. The idea here is to start drawing from one box and then move your way up or down as you like. But just make sure you observe how the lines on your picture relate to the grid lines on it. And then replicate the same thing on your drawing paper. At many points in this video, I slowed down my drawing pace a little bit. This is just me observing closely how the lines and curves in my pictures intersect with the grid squares. By doing this observation, I get to avoid unnecessary errors when doing these outlines. By the way, it's also important to understand that mistakes and errors are also a part of the learning process, so you have to embrace them in order to learn. There is a common controversy about this method of drawing outlines. A lot of people say artists who use grids are cheaters and that drawing with the grid method is a way of cheating the process. But I don't think that's true at all. This method of drawing, just like every other method out there, needs to be learned and understood properly before you can get the hang of it. It has its own technicalities to it, just like every other method out there, and you need to understand these technicalities and know them correctly in order for you to be able to use this method at all. It's not a bad thing if you try to expand your skill set by exploring other methods of drawing, but don't you let someone else look down on your skills just because they think you're doing something wrong, or because you're not using the method that they are using. As long as it took you hours of practice to be able to understand one method, you deserve to use it just as much as anyone else deserves to use the other methods that they are using. You can see that the face is forming now. Like I said earlier, you need to pay close attention to how the lines and curves on your reference intersect with your grid boxes, and replicate that on your drawing paper. This will help you to get a near accurate outline. You can see that the oval shape of the face has already been formed, and now I'm already drawing the shirt. I'm sure you may be wondering why I'm shading some parts of the drawing already. If this is just a sketch, right? This is my unique method, or maybe not so unique of a method because many artists use it as well. It's my method of breaking down the shades that are going to be on the drawing, even while I'm still at the sketching stage. There are some shadows and some highlights present on the reference picture. So I try to dissect those shadows and give it a light shade so that even at the sketching stage, it has some kind of form already. Now by having a form, I mean that it just graduated from being a bunch of lines to looking like a sketch that is going in the right direction. That is going to be shaded and it will look realistic eventually. Now we're moving on to the features on the face. This part can be very tricky, but don't worry about that. If you are able to study it closely, you won't go wrong. I mean, if you get the overall shape of the head correctly. This shouldn't be a big thing, right? Following my reference closely, I'm going to draw the left eye now. The width of the eye is about 1 inch, which means it cuts across one square grid from one edge of a line to the other edge. You need to pay close attention to little things like this in order not to mess up your drawing. Now I'm shading the iris lightly so you can have that little bit of form. So it will start looking like more than a bunch of lines and curves. I'm moving on to the right eye now. It's about the same measurement as the left eye. About 1 inch. If you study both eyes, you'll see the difference between the shaded iris and the one without the shaded iris. Before shading this iris, it looked a little bit weird. And which is one of the reasons, aside from giving it form, it's one of the reasons why I shaded the shadowed parts of the drawing already, even at the sketch stage. This is just me marking out a little bit of shape for the nose. Before actually coming back to it to sketch, I'm going to do the same thing for the middle line on the lip. Just going to leave a little mark there before coming back to actually sketch it out. I'm making the outlines for the eyebrows now. I'm going to do the same thing for the other side. Now that I'm done making the outlines of the eyebrows, I can come back and sketch the nose. Just like I said earlier, you need to observe closely how the curves intersect with the grid lines on your reference. And replicate that same thing in your drawing paper. You can see me doing the light shading again, just to give it some kind of form, like I said earlier. Now, you can decide that you want to do this light shading and you can decide not to. It's totally up to you. Some people are comfortable with it and some are not. So you hold the choice. Now that I'm done sketching the eyes and the nose, I can go ahead and sketch out the lips. I usually like to start with the middle line that divides the upper lip and the lower lip. Because by starting from there, it makes it easier for me to work my way up or down. At this point, I can say I'm done with the outline. But I'm still messing around with the light shading thing just to try and have a basic form before I start the actual shading of the drawing. I think at this point, I can go ahead and drop my pencil. You can see I'm done with the outline and the next step after this will be to shade the drawing. I need you to bear in mind that there is no such thing as perfection when it comes to art. You need to be ready to embrace all the mistakes that come along the way. It's all a part of the learning process. You most likely won't get an accurate outline on your first few tries. But just know that you are on your way to getting better with each new drawing that you make. Here we have our reference photo right beside the drawing. So you can see it's not even accurate. But as we proceed along in the drawing, we'll get better and better. I hope you find this video very helpful. Thank you very much for watching. Please like this video and subscribe to UdoCreatives for more art content.